Hi everybody, welcome to the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host. I'm the founder of StelliumAstrology.com and I'm also the former horoscope columnist of Elle Magazine UK, as well as an occasional tutor for the London School of Astrology. And today I'm recording a podcast episode for you, knowing that there was a gap between the last one and this one that's coming out because I had coronavirus. If you can hear, I still sound a bit bunged up, a bit gross, but I'm actually doing okay. And even though I had COVID, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I feel almost liberated by the fact that I've had it now, because I now have like I can live without the fear of it, if you know what I mean. Like I guess I was a bit anxious about getting it, and I was really worried about it, and now I don't have to worry anymore because I've had it, my baby's had it, my partner's had it, and we've all done okay. Yes, we were fevery, and our heads were a bit fishbowly and a bit crap, and I'm grateful for the fact that, you know, I had what seems to be a manageable presentation of the virus for my family. In fact, I think Ewan was the worst out of all of us, and I think the reason why he had it so bad was probably because he had a cold as well. I think he had a cold before, as it was coming on basically, and so he was already horribly full of cold, and then he got a fever and stuff as well. It was really horrible, really horrible having to see my little baby suffer, but that was his first ever proper illness, and what do you know, he got the trendy one, so the one that everyone's talking about. So I don't think I've got anything particularly exciting to tell you today, other than if you want to be a patron of mine, I have opened up a new tier, which is literally a bottom tier, where I will be giving a video, like an monthly astrology highlights video, that's available to all tiers now. And on top of that, I may do an occasional tarot reading or something like that. At the moment, it's just trying to find the time. Time management is, it's just a bit tricky with the baby. So I'm doing what I can to get everything organised as and when I can. But so I've got 3 tiers now. I've got the £1/$1 tier, where you do get something for that. And then you've got the £4 tier, where you get like a new moon interpretation and second part of interviews. And then the top tier, you get everything, including all the previous stuff, but you also get full moon interpretation, retrograde planet interpretations, and all of that sort of stuff as well. So I'm informed by my patrons that you really do get your money's worth on each level of the tier. So on each tier, on each of the tiers, each levels. Oh gosh, it's like my brain is not working. But anyway, so today I thought I would answer a question that one of my patrons asked me. She said that she has been studying the aspects as per the podcast, and she said that the pod and the drawing on how to think about aspects was very helpful. However, I find myself lost regarding what planet is affecting the other. In regular horoscopes, like, for instance, January the 5th, retrograde Venus will be sextiling Neptune. Got it. But is it the faster planet, Venus, bringing something to Neptune, or is it Neptune affecting Venus in Venus transit? Okay, so as far as aspecting planets are concerned, generally the faster planet tends to bring that planet's experience to the other planet. So if we're talking about actually in transit, so just transiting planets, for example, so say it was Venus and Neptune sextile, they do tend to affect each other, but you'll find that the faster moving planet, it brings something with it to the slower moving planet. Not to say that the slower moving planet doesn't actually have anything to bring itself. I find myself personally, could be based on my natal chart, just on my chart alone, but whenever Venus and Neptune get into contact in the sky, I'm often drawn to doing things like yoga, or like something mindful, something that gets me centered and into a calm place within, but something that's also quite enjoyable. You've got that nice kind of Neptunian need to escape, and then that lovely Venusian experiencing of enjoyment. So for me, that is yoga. I found myself as well, whenever Venus and Neptune got into contact with each other in the skies, not in my chart, but in the skies, I would also tend to read about relationships, and particularly relationships where people start taking the liberties a bit, or in particular, I've recommended this book before, Sex in the Forbidden Zone. I would find myself whenever those two planets got into contact, I would pick up that book and I'd start reading that book again. It was really weird because I just used it, because with Neptune you can say, you can talk about boundaries and a lack of boundaries. With Saturn you can talk about the need to enforce boundaries. So it's funny that both Neptune and Saturn are boundaries planets, but in different ways. So yeah, with Venus and Neptune, there is a having to understand in some ways, sort of like relationship boundaries, for example, or it could just be, maybe there's a sense of wanting to go out and have fun, but you catch the virus. Again, it's like a certain boundary has been breached. Neptune is like the breaching of boundaries, and that kind of the urge to merge, like getting with people and to become one kind of thing. But yeah, so each planet does bring its own essence to the party when all of them are transiting. So you'll notice that transiting Venus and transiting Neptune together will have its own particular feel, a kind of combination. And I suppose that's why stelliums are so hard to interpret, especially by transit, because there's so many different planetary energies that get intertwined, and as they're expressed, there's a sense of a struggle in trying to differentiate which planet's bringing what, but together they play a piece of music that is unique in itself. It's like trying to dismantle the orchestra, a deconstructed orchestral arrangement. I'm starting to go down that food path again. I'm thinking of a deconstructed eaten mess, or on like one of those cooking programs when they're like, I decided to make a deconstructed cottage pie. It's just basically all the ingredients separate in a pretty arrangement. It looks kind of cool, but it's essentially you've just broken it down. When you put all those planets together, what you get from each of those planetary energies is the recipe that they make. So, for example, the Capricorn stellium generation, one person in particular whose chart springs to mind at the moment, they have Uranus in Capricorn, Mercury, Saturn, and Neptune, all in Capricorn. If you think about that as separately ingredients for a cake, and then as a stellium, you put that together. All of those planets have an equally valid expression. They all have something that they bring to the recipe. If you left one of those ingredients out, for example, I'm gonna say that Saturn is the egg, because egg is often the thing that holds things together, doesn't it? It's kind of like the bonding ingredient that brings stuff together. But if you left something out, it would definitely change the outcome of the cake. And that's the difference that's basically the same with aspects. Each planet brings its own special influence to the combination, and sometimes one planet will be louder than the other, but often you'll find, so if you want to see what it's like for transiting planets, it's literally a case of maybe switching on the news and watching the headlines come up and keeping a picture of the chart of the day in front of you and having a look and seeing what is mentioned in the news. So, like for me, with the Venus-Neptune thing, for example, reading Sex in the Forbidden Zone and doing yoga are two expressions for me personally. But on the news at the same time, you might hear that somebody who was victimized was able to be heard, and they got their, a kind of a sense of liberation or justice. If you think about Venus as a planet of balance and of fairness, and Libra being kind of the sign that is associated with law sometimes, it could be like a legal case that was won for all women in the Me Too movement. That was like a precedent, for example, that kind of thing, where Neptune is the planet of victimization, where people don't have any kind of ability to fight back in some way or another, and often forgotten. And then you have this wonderful, justified, lawful expression of Venus. So there's that. There are so many ways you could look at it. Often with, it's usually something like, for example, I'm thinking of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction again. For me, my research with Saturn-Pluto, it just got so deep because there were so many different ways you could look at that combination. And often people who have Saturn-Pluto in their natal charts have a healthy disrespect for authority figures or the controlling elite. And with Saturn-Pluto, that massive conjunction that happened in the skies back in January 2020, if you think about those two powerhouses getting together and what's come from that, there's been a lot of people who don't trust the power structure now, and the power structure is being shown to be a little bit dishonest. If I'm being totally honest myself, if we look at what's going on in the UK at the very least, with Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, holding about 20 parties in Downing Street when everybody was supposed to be locking down and not seeing the people that they love because it was too dangerous, but they were there having parties. That seems kind of crazy. So with Saturn and Pluto getting together in the sky, there's a sense of, I always think of that combination. With great power comes great responsibility. It just, for me, that those two planets kind of epitomise that saying. They don't often work alone, like I said, with a conjunction, for example, but each planet has its own way of affecting the other. But even when you've got the faster moving planet like Saturn reaching Pluto, there is, I think Frank Clifford is the one who works with sequential conjunctions. So you can read the planets almost in the order that they affect each other. So if you've got a row of planets in conjunction, and you've got, like I said before, you've got Uranus, Mercury, Saturn and Neptune, you can read the planets telling a story in the order of those planets, and that is a sequential conjunction. But you could even look at it as the faster moving planet, like the moon, for example. Definitely the moon will often trigger the planet that it's transiting. It will bring something out, but it will bring out a lunar response, or it will personalise that response to the individual that's being triggered. So, for example, if it was Venus, so if it was the moon sextiling Venus, or if the moon was squaring Venus, the moon will trigger that kind of square, that response that needs to be acknowledged, that square kind of tension, and you will have to deal with, perhaps it might be a situation where you have to kind of diffuse an argument, maybe, for example. You don't get involved in the argument, but you are the peacemaker. You're triggered into that Venusian role. So I hope that that's kind of made sense. Alternately, when it comes to your own natal chart being affected, whose chart have I got open at the moment? Oh, that's Boris Johnson. I'm just opening up astro.com. Who's that there? That's Britney Spears. But I don't want Britney Spears. I decided I'm going to look at Johnny Depp because I looked at him before. Oh, page has gone a bit. I think I've logged out. Come on. Johnny Depp. There we are. I looked at him before when I did the aspects episode, and I don't know why, he's just been fresh in my mind lately. So I'm on astro.com, and I'm just going to press with transits just so we can get the little green planets around the edge so we can see. Now, if we're looking at Johnny Depp, for example, we would look at when a planet by transit triggers another planet. Now, I don't know what made me want to look at his chart, other than the fact that I know that the Saturn-Uranus square was quite prominent in his chart during the whole court case that he had with his... Is her name Amber Heard? Was that her name? The girl who he was basically in a relationship with, married to, and, you know, it didn't end well at all, basically. Now, for Johnny Depp, he's got Saturn hanging around his descendant, his relationship area, and he's got Uranus up there very close to his midheaven. At the moment, it's at about 11 degrees, it looks like. Is that right? Yeah, it looks about 11 degrees, and his midheaven's at about 3 of Taurus. And Saturn's at about... Oh, where's Saturn? What degree is Saturn at the moment? It's at 14 of Aquarius, and his descendant is at 12.5 of Aquarius. So he's feeling that heaviness in his relationship zone, and that Uranus on the midheaven. That whole case got very ugly, didn't it? And it got very public. So a result of what happened in that situation was that actually his public image was completely destroyed. I mean, you know, he kept a low profile in the sense that we didn't know much about him other than what he was doing work-wise, but this threw his personal life up into a very public arena. And actually, Uranus is the modern ruler of his descendant, and Saturn is the traditional ruler. So that's a very interesting connection to make there too, that he's got like two signifiers for his descendant, one in the relationship house and one in the career house as well. So it's an interesting sort of way of looking at that, to see that it would definitely have something to do with relationships. And, you know, to have Uranus in the area of public reputation, it's definitely going to be a change in what the public see, or how people see you publicly, your public persona, the way that people, even the work that you do is going to change. Whether or not, like in Johnny Depp's case, it was that the work just, he lost a lot of work because people couldn't be seen to be endorsing somebody who was it was confirmed. I say confirmed, but it was, you know, the ruling was that he was violent towards his wife, and, you know, they couldn't be seen to support somebody who was treating another human being, no less his wife, that way. And here we go. At the moment, he's got Venus retrograde going over his moon in Capricorn. So his moon's around the middle degrees of Capricorn, and Venus retrograde is currently, as I record this, at about 11 degrees. His moon's at 13 degrees. So she's just gone. Venus has just gone all the way back over his moon. Now, interestingly, I did read, and it's a 6th house moon as well, so concerned with work. I did read that Johnny Depp has recently got a new acting role. And it's quite from what I understand it, but I might be wrong because I don't know everything about everything. It sounds as though the role that he's got is quite with a smaller production budget and from a smaller production company than the one he's previously used to working with. So somebody's finally taken the plunge and decided to go with Johnny Depp again. Now, he's got Moon square Jupiter, and he's also got Moon sextile Neptune. There we go. Iron Moon trine Pluto. There you go. So he's got quite a lot of planets in contact. So that means that whenever Venus transits his moon, anything that's in aspect to that is going to get transited as well. So we could look at the Moon square Jupiter, and we could say that actually Venus retrograde challenged his future, the way that he's moving forward in life, and his aspirations as far as his, where he sees his life headed now, which you could put down to Jupiter, and say that it challenged a different perspective for him. So I doubt he's ever going to be out of pocket, like I said previously about him, but he probably won't be earning the kind of money that he was expecting to earn anymore from films, unless, of course, he gets over this, because, actors can get over this kind of thing. But right now, it's almost as though, his earning potential, which we could put down to Venus, we could look at that as an expression of, worth, and how much he's worth now, is going back, and he's having to rethink. Jupiter being the bigger picture, the long-term vision of where he's going, is being squared by that hard-working moon in the 6th house in Capricorn. So actually, he's challenging his ideas about what's realistic for him as far as earning potential and where he sees himself going, his trajectory, basically. And then you've got that sextile to Neptune. Well, actually, that sextile to Neptune with Venus retrograde going back and sextile Neptune, he's still being given an opportunity to work in film. So actually, he's still getting to do what he loves. And, Neptune is the planet of cinema and that silver screen, that glamour. So actually, there is this opportunity for him to take something like that little window of opportunity where he might have been able to say, actually, I don't want to work on anything that's less than a certain amount of money, or, I don't want to work on something lower budget than I'm used to. But actually, he's, his hardworking moon, that moon that needs to be structured and, isn't afraid of a bit of hard work, is saying, yes, okay, then let's do this. With that sextile to Neptune, that opportunity to work in that area again. And actually, with that trine to Pluto as well, who knows what, every single expression for him could be, because it's not always easy to see every single expression in a famous person's chart, because we don't live their life and we don't know what it's like for them as an individual. But this might be a positive way for him to challenge the public perception of him through doing something that's different, and perhaps actually he may earn the respect of people who thought that he kind of gave up his ability to act in a variety of ways and do something different, because he had such a big paycheck from Tim Burton and Disney. Now he's got this opportunity to transform how he feels about himself, and potentially how others feel about him through that kind of Pluto in Virgo, who is very much about, Virgo's a very humble sign. Pluto is a planet which, strips us back to our core. So perhaps he's actually been stripped down to being humble again. And it's all in this 2nd house as well. I actually happen to be looking at a Placidus chart here right now at the moment. So the house system's in Placidus. So maybe actually this trine to Pluto is quite humbling for him, and that actually he's experienced the redundancy aspect of that kind of, he's got Venus, Pluto, let's have a look, what's that? It's a bit, actually no, it's quite wide, but he's got a T-square with Mercury and Venus at the apex, and the T-square is apexing from an opposition between Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus and Mars in Virgo. And Pluto is part of that conjunction of Uranus and Mars. It's a bit wide. So I would still be inclined to include that, and to sort of have that as part of his T-square. But yeah, so it's just about kind of how this very public case played out, how nasty it got, how people changed their opinion of him, he lost work. But ultimately, this transit is giving him an opportunity to start over, to learn the lessons. I know he's been doing a bit more charity work. I think he's been doing stuff that he can to change public perception of him, because he got bashed, very publicly bashed in that case. Now, that's without me knowing the ins and outs of every detail of what happened. But just for you to look at, for example, so I know I've chosen, rather than picking planets, Saturn and Uranus, crossing over his midheaven and his descendant, the axis. But actually with Venus retrograde going back over the moon, Venus will be carrying a message which triggers his moon in some way. And that would be the same for even if Uranus was to, like for example in Johnny Depp's case, Uranus is going to transit his Mercury-Venus conjunction in Taurus in a few years to come, not just yet, but soon. It's currently got the nodes going back over there, so he's probably got a little bit more work to do. He's actually being pulled out of his comfort zone publicly, and I think that that's part of this learning journey for him right now. But so with Uranus coming up, it's going to go over his Mercury and his Venus. That's going to happen. It's going to trine as well his moon in Capricorn. So he's going to have Uranian experiences which bring out lessons for him to learn, triggering his natal placements. And that's what happens when you have a transiting planet triggering, literally a transiting planet triggering your natal planets, because your natal planets aren't going to be moving, whereas the transiting planets are going to be moving and bringing stuff out, bringing their own experiences to your natal planets. And it's a little bit like sometimes things can be awakened, particularly like a Uranus transit. An experience can be awakened within you when they transit one of your personal planets or any of your natal planets, basically. So I'm hoping that makes sense. A teacher of mine, Richard Swatton, said, if you want to learn about a transit you're going to have, read about the planet that's going to be transited, because you're going to have stuff brought out of you. That experience is going to be brought out, and it's going to help to familiarise yourself with your own connection with that natal planet. But yeah, I think it can't hurt to read about both, to be honest with you, and to kind of understand what each planet can bring. The moon is obviously much easier. It goes around the chart once a month, so you're easier at tuning in with that kind of lunar trigger, and it really is a trigger. It's like an emotional, habitual kickback sometimes, and it brings your natal chart into daily play. The sun has that yearly transit, so you can wait until the sun gets somewhere and highlights an area for you. And you have to think of each planet in its own right as that kind of thing. Like the moon is reflective, the moon is emotional, the sun is a spotlight, the sun highlights. Mercury is a messenger. He usually brings messages or take messages. Venus is definitely about learning how to value ourselves. It's about our worth. It's about whether we want to enjoy or pleasure ourselves in some way. Jupiter might be about taking a risk, about gambling in some way or another. Saturn might be about doing hard work, a kind of apprenticeship of some description, getting your head down and getting the work done. Uranus about change. Neptune, again, like I said, maybe about boundaries, about learning about where we're perhaps a little bit too forgiving, maybe, or perhaps where we decide that we want to get out of reality and escape and go out drinking or taking drugs or something, or perhaps escaping reality through film, creativity that way. And Pluto can be that kind of devouring, obsessional, immersive kind of experience, which we experience it on such a real, raw level that when it comes to the end of that transit, we are no longer the person we were before. It's almost like that thing you can't unsee. It changes you on a level. But that's just in a nutshell. I hope it was useful. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to go in the other room now and chill out. I hope I didn't just do a load of COVID waffle. I'm praying that I'm still coherent and you guys are getting something from this podcast. I do seem to be getting good feedback, so perhaps, that's not anything to worry about. Anyway, I hope your Mercury and Venus retrogrades are treating you kind, and I will speak to you next time. And take care, you guys. Thanks a lot. Bye now.